Hello, I'm Addison, and this is Cannabis ClipNotes with Angie Roullier. Angie is an educator, an advocate, and an author. Her first book, Pot for the People, The Plant, the People, and Shop Policies of Cannabis, sorts through the history and science of cannabis based on research and Angie's 12 years of personal interaction with medical marijuana patients, vendors, shop owners, and scientists. Angie is an advocate for the importance of proper science-based cannabinoid education, dosages, prescription interactions, whole plant products, terpene profiles, and solventless extractions. She is a firm believer that targeted and tailored cannabinoid and terpene medicine is the future of the industry. In the first 10 years of Angie's 15 years in the cannabis industry, she worked as a bud tender, in administration, in management, and in patient relationships and education. She brings her knowledge and insights to the pages of her latest book, Bud Tender's Blueprint: Compassion and Chemistry at the Cannabis Counter. It is scheduled for pre-sale this fall. Now, the cannabis industry is the largest startup. It brings unique opportunities and experiences. There are so many books waiting to be written. Now, Angie, you have 15 years of solid research and experience behind your books. For those wanting to write a book, where do they begin? What is your advice?
Well, first, you're going to start by asking yourself a lot of questions, and you really have to be honest with yourself. So let's start with what got you into the industry. What made you leave whatever it is you were doing and want to jump into this circus that we call the cannabis industry? Now, once you find that, whether it's banking or botany, whether it's the law that got you interested or the patients themselves, you really do have to pick a lane. There are plenty of jack of all trades out there, so you really have to hone in on it. And once you do pick that lane, where do you see the potholes in your lane? Where do you see where things can be fixed and how your experiences and your opinions can actually make this a better space, for all of us involved? And, how is your voice going to benefit? Does the book that you want to write, does it offer solutions, or are you just looking for a soapbox to stand on and pitch a bitch? We have plenty of people out there with opinions but no solutions. We really need this constructive, not criticism, but we need to bring this into a better space, and do the best that we can in order to do this. You also have to ask yourself what type of book. Is it going to be storytelling? Is it going to be reference, or is it going to be both? You really need a strong target audience. And this is actually one of the mistakes I made in Pot for the People. After my 10 plus years behind the counter, I kept getting the same questions over and over, and I wasn't always at the counter. It was out in public and things of that nature. So when I wrote Pot for the People, it was almost like a purge. Like everything that I had learned up to that point had to come out. Some of the feedback that I'm getting from those in the industry is they love the science, and the layman's way that I put it to them. And they like, my suggestions on policy and how to run retail with compassion. And on the other hand, the consumer finds themselves a little bit more drawn to my stories about, how to talk to your doctor, how to talk to your kids, because these are things that they can use in their own lives on top of the science. If it is a reference book, I urge you to double, triple check all of your references and have it fully cited. I generally do not recommend that you get your information from Reddit or High Times Magazine. If you do find something on those platforms that you find interesting, I beg of you, please hunt down the science and use that as a citation. When you are writing things with scientific references, it's really important to, get it down there, and it depends on where you want to put it in the book. Some people put it at the bottom of the page, some people put it at the back. I chose to put it at the bottom of the pages. It just makes it easier instead of having to go through that long list in the back. Um, I'm also a big fan of showing both sides of the coin. So if it is a reference or even storytelling, you want to show the good and the bad of cannabis. Cannabis can do amazing things, and we've all seen them do such things, but it can also harm. So when you offer both sides of the cannabis coin to your reader, not only do they feel involved, but they can make educated decisions for themselves. They can take said research and they can take it upon themselves to fall down that rabbit hole and then do with the information with, what they will. Because honestly, we don't know what our reader is using cannabis for or how they plan to apply it to their lives. So now that you've answered these questions, you got to find yourself a publisher. It is no small task, especially with Reefer Madness alive and well in the world. I got plenty of rejections of, clutching their pearls and no, we would never or we could never. You can go traditional or you can go self. Both have their pros and cons. So with traditional, the cons are you pretty much lose all of your creative input once they pick up your book. They do the editing without your input. They pick your cover, things of that nature. The pros, they do the marketing. It is up to them to get it out there. And hopefully you're just sitting back, waiting for royalty checks. Now, when you self-publish, some of the cons are you have to do all of that legwork. They will, get it on Amazon for you, which is a necessary evil, but it really comes down to you and your marketing and how you're going to get out there in front of, your target audience. Some of the cons, again, is the marketing, but the pros, you do have that creative, input through the entire process, which I found extremely helpful. The publisher that picked me up is run mostly by women, which I felt encouraged. And, anything that we come across that needs to be changed or, any issues that we may have, we really are upfront with each other. And to me, that was really important. You also have to ask, especially if it's a reference book, what their policies are on new editions. And this holds true for both traditional and self-publishing. Since cannabis is constantly changing pretty much on the daily, especially when it comes to science, this is something that you're always going to want to keep up. Especially when a lot of your stuff might hit the editing floor. When I wrote Pop for the People, there were over 300 pages, and I think as it sits now, it's a little over 180. So when these things hit the floor, you have to really try not to take it personally. It's just the way that they do it and the way that they clean it up. But you can hold on to these things and, put them in a folder, write them down, whatever your process is, and you can either save them for a second edition, or you can use them to write a second book, which is exactly what I did with Bud Tender's Blueprint. And I had also learned from my lesson of having it be too general. So Bud Tender's Blueprint is definitely honing in on bud tending and on management in cannabis retail. Please don't let them stifle your voice. Please, like I said, they're going to try, and it's not personal. But you know what you want to say. When you sit down to do this manuscript, you know in your heart what you want to get out into the world. It's going to be ugly. It may be misshapen. It may be unorganized, but you do know the bones of it. So you can't just let the editor run with it and, not have any input. One of the things that I had fought with my editor about was flower versus flowers. So every time he would go to edit, he would want to add the S onto it when speaking about, cannabis flowers. And I said, it's not flowers. It said it's flower. And even though it didn't make any sense to him, this is the way that we speak in the industry. And, you really got to stick with it, and make sure that that comes through. When I did get the acceptance letter from my current publisher, the editor had said, I was often taken aback by the strength of your personality. And I could not have been happier. I wanted to put that on a billboard absolutely everywhere. Because to me, even though the splicing and dicing and the editing, my voice still came through. My passion for this plant, my passion for the people who interact with the plant absolutely came through, and it was not lost in the process. Another great compliment that I get is from friends and family is when they say, Angie, I can hear you telling that story. I can hear those words coming out of your mouth. And this is where it's at for me. It reminds me to keep fighting and why we fight, to make sure that our tone and what we really want to say gets through to the people that we're trying to talk to. So in the next couple of weeks, I'll be sharing what I have learned about writing and publishing a cannabis book. And I truly hope that this inspires you to stand up, open your mouth, and tell your stories about cannabis.
All of the cannabis clip notes. The videos can be found on the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and on our website.